We will be conducting tonight's meeting here in City Hall Council Chambers, as well as virtually using Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in the meeting via Zoom, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Mayor Pro Tem Holly Andreotta will be giving the invocation this evening, and Mayor Carl Skint will begin the meeting immediately after.
Thank you. Let's open in prayer. Lord, my prayer is simple tonight. I ask that you be with us, that your presence will be in this room. God, I pray in the coming weeks that you will allow truth to be revealed and that you will protect our community. And God, that tonight you will give us wisdom and discernment. And I pray for unity in this community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I now call the City of Lincoln regular meeting of the City Council, Lincoln Redevelopment Successor Agency, Lincoln Public Financing Authority meeting for September 24th, 2024 to order. Report from closed session. We had no closed session, therefore no report. Next item on the agenda is roll call.
Yes. Councilmember Andreotta.
Get here.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Here.
Mayor Carl Skint.
Here. Next item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance, to be led by Christian Spence, our Community Development Director.
The United States public for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. No, Mayor.
Is item 6A, responding parties' production of documents responsive to the legislative subpoena to the gathering in. If our,
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sitting in tonight, and my name is Ryan Jones, as your acting city attorney. And the city did get an objection from the gathering in, and so what we will be doing is pursuing all legal options to compel the records to be produced. But at this point, we have not received any records, and they have objected to it.
I'm really sorry to see that TGI has elected not to comply with our subpoena for records regarding the medical respite facility proposed for the city of Lincoln. In spite of their constant protestations that they wish to discuss items with the city of Lincoln, they have decided not to provide even the minimum information and facts that are necessary for us to start a dialogue. In my opinion, as a result of this refusal to provide documents, actually documents were used to win the award, the state grant that they have left us with no options but to proceed down the litigation path. Really disappointed.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah. Well, especially since they're public documents anyway, and the grant was public money, and for all their talk about wanting to work with us, just another brick on the wall of lies. So thank you, Mr. Jones, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is the county-wide active transportation plan and annual unmet transportation needs assessment. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of the City Council and members of the public. My name is actually Mike Costa. I'm a Principal Transportation Planner with PCTPA, or Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. Corey couldn't be here tonight, so I'll go ahead and give the presentation. I'm just going to provide the council and the members of the public with a very brief update on a couple of projects that we are working on behalf of our regional partners here at the City of Lincoln and our other jurisdictions, as well as the county. Two of the projects that I'll be discussing tonight, one being the Countywide Active Transportation Plan, or ATP for short, and the other being our Unmet Transit Needs Assessment Process, or UTN is what you'll hear me refer it sometimes as. So starting with the Placer County Active Transportation Plan, this essentially is something that we have not done before on a county-wide level at this scale. This is something that some of the jurisdictions like Lincoln and others have looked at from a local perspective, and the county is looked at from a unincorporated area perspective, but we've never kind of created that linkage between our active transportation projects here at the local level with the countywide plans. So really what this document is aiming to achieve is a vision for how we can walk, bike, and roll throughout Placer County, throughout all of our jurisdictions and the connections even to our neighboring jurisdictions and neighboring counties. So we are, as part of this process, conducting extensive public outreach in order to essentially identify projects from the ground up and then to prioritize those projects to prepare them for future investment opportunities. So once we get a list of prioritized active transportation projects here in the county, we can then go after funding for those projects and be more competitive. So as I mentioned, this is a county-wide effort. There are some localized efforts occurring with some of our partnering agencies throughout Placer County. But the bottom line of this effort, and it's actually not showing up on the screens yet, but it's still showing up here. So I'm not sure if,
They can fix it for you.
yeah, apologies.
No, it's okay.
So as I mentioned, this is a countywide effort, and some of our local jurisdictions, as shown on the screen here, are participating in some of localized efforts to look at their active transportation plan. All that to be said is that we will take all the efforts that are happening right now, both at the local level and at the countywide level, and combine them into this active transportation plan for the entire region. So that is something that our agency is leading the efforts on in that coordination. As I mentioned before, we have already started in public outreach, both in this community as well as in others throughout the region. The first outreach phase that we started was back in May and June of this year. We did have a local event here at your Cinco de Mayo event, and we did conduct a survey of which we received over 400 responses. And if you want more information about the outcome of that survey, essentially you can go to the project website, which is pctpa.net/ATP for more information. Some of the outreach summary comments that we received from that effort include, and this should be no surprise, but looking at infrastructure that creates a safer environment for our walking and biking community. There is also an emphasis in some of the comments on creating those regional connections, such as paths to some of our high trafficked areas of the county, including the Auburn Ravine Recreation Area, as well as, of course, safe paths to school and other recreational opportunities within our local jurisdictions. A little bit about the schedule of this project. We do anticipate that by early 2025, after we've finished our analysis phase of all existing conditions, that we will have a preliminary list of projects identified for each local jurisdiction. And then starting in roughly January of 2025, we would then work with the local jurisdictions to start prioritizing those projects so that we can again establish a list of investments for future funding opportunities. And that would be done with the whole plan being complete by summer of 2025. So I'm going to transition to the next regional project that we're working on. This is something that we do on an annual basis, the Unmet Transit Needs Assessment process. And the reason behind this effort is really because our agency, PCTPA, is the administrator of what's called Transportation Development Act, or TDA funding. TDA funding comes in multiple sources of funds under the TDA program, and one of those sources of funds, which is local transportation funds, can be used for purposes outside of public transit, which is what they're originally intended for. But before we can use those funds for other purposes, we have to conduct an unmet transit needs process and an assessment for that fiscal year. So that assessment follows along the lines of very strict criteria that in order to be unmet transit need, in order to be reasonable to meet, is another determination we have to make. We have to follow this criteria that's displayed on this slide, which is established by the PCTPA Board of Directors. That criteria, in summary, looks at comments and evaluates them for whether or not they are for services that exist or do not exist. That's kind of one key component. And the reasonable to meet factor is essentially, are those services going to be sustainable if we are proposing them to be implemented? Can they be sustained? Can they be supported? And so we look at various different documentation for that effort. For this unmet transit needs assessment cycle, we did start with a survey that was launched on September 3rd that I would encourage every member of the public to take a look at. That survey is available on PCTPA's website if you go to the unmet-transit-needs webpage within our website, and that survey is available through October 31st. After October 31st, our staff will work with your jurisdiction staff as well as our transit operators to evaluate all the comments that we receive based on the criteria established, and then we will bring to our board the findings of whether or not there are unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet in February of 2025. As I mentioned, you can participate in this process by providing your comments on our survey that's available online. That survey is available as well in Spanish and Tagalog outside of English language. And of course, you're always feel free to reach out to me with my contact information on this slide if you have any questions or would like to provide your comments to me directly. With that, this concludes my presentation on our efforts. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Questions online?
No, Mayor, no hands are raised.
Thank you very much, Mike. Could you please come up to Mike?
Looks like the Planning Transportation Agency is doing Lincoln Loomis, and then the other areas within his map, we're doing an own plan. Was I understanding that correct?
Answer.
So just to clarify the question, the map showed different efforts that were happening at local jurisdictional levels. We at PCTPA are leading the effort for the Lincoln area because Lincoln is not doing its own active transportation plan, as like Auburn and Rockland and I believe Roseville are all doing kind of their own sub-plans. So we're leading the effort for Lincoln. However, with that being said, we are going to combine all the plans in the end, and our agency is going to make sure that the countywide ATP incorporates all components of the plan in the final document for all jurisdictions, including Lincoln.
And so I understand that they're coordinating between all of those entities. The other question I had is in regards to the unmet transit needs. It sounds like the survey would be able to allow us as a city to go after some kind of funding of some sort. Did I hear that correct?
So the unmet transit needs assessment process and survey are to identify potential unmet transit needs that we then evaluate based on the criteria I presented in the presentation. However, with that being said, it doesn't allow us to seek extra funding. It's a requirement for the funds we already administer under the Transportation Development Act.
No further comments or questions? Thank you very much, Mike. Go on to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment on non-agenda items. This is the opportunity for people in the audience and online to make comments and remarks to City Council about items in their purview, and understanding that we can take no action because it is a non-agenda item, and we might pass it off to staff for further analysis or to get the item on a future agenda. Each person has 3 minutes. We would appreciate people filling out cards, but you don't have to. I do have a card from a Jason Daggett. Is that right, Jason?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jason Daggett. I'm a resident of Lincoln. I want to address what I consider to be a deficiency in the city's ability to effectively and efficiently maintain the infrastructure that we currently have in the city. Over the past several months, I've been in contact with several people in this room and had discussions about the lack of upkeep of the infrastructure in our city, especially in the roads of the letter and number streets. There is a multitude of data sets available that show poor infrastructure, such as road conditions, outdated or missing utilities, unreliable water services, to name a few, are a large driver of the decrease in value of homes. And according to a recent report by the California HUD, it's also a large driver if homeowners are willing to clean up or fix their own properties. Not to mention the safety risks associated with poor road surfaces, lack of proper striping, and lack of adequate lighting. So why would the city not be upkeeping these roads? The answer I keep hearing is we don't have the budget. Yet the roads in almost every other part of town are in far better condition. Joyner just got repaved to the tune of, I'm sure, multi-millions of dollars, and I'm sure that work had to be done for some reason or another, though that reason is different depending on which city employee you ask. So if the budget is so short, why over the last several meetings that I've attended have there been proposals that the council is quote unquote so excited about to spend money on what I think most would consider unnecessary purchases, such as tens of thousands of dollars on fancy traffic cameras to help private businesses locate thieves, they have their own, or to help private insurance companies assign fault for accidents. Not exactly sure how that's a government responsibility. Or plans to potentially spend millions to give new trails and walking paths and develop the old dump site. And before the idea of this part of the budget can only be used for X or Y, there's also been conversations about moving budget from one area to another to accommodate these projects. So can this only happen for projects the council is excited about? This type of irresponsible spending is like that house you see with the roof leak covered by a tarp for years, but they keep buying a new car or a new iPhone because they're excited about the tech. The difference is that person is irresponsibly spending their own money and the city is irresponsibly spending ours. The city had a traffic safety report provided to them by UC Berkeley in September of 23, and the only thing that's been started from that report is the repainting of 3.5 intersections of crosswalks and 4 blocks of bike lanes. Even by the hellaciously poor government standards for efficiency, this is unacceptable. Every citizen is entitled to the same quality of infrastructure in their respective part of the city. Myself and others shouldn't have to deal with substandard services just because the idea of an underground fiber network or extra fancy cameras sounds cool, or that's what other cities have, or there's some other excuse about how the budget isn't managed more efficiently. If the budget isn't allocated adequately, then may I suggest that you deal with the budget and or those who set the budget first. Don't get distracted by tech or keeping up with the Joneses. Remove the blue tarp and fix your roof. Fix what we have before we spend more money on things that we won't have the resources to maintain in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next comment card is from Reverend Virgil Nelson.
Good evening, council members, staff, and concerned citizens. I'm Virgil Nelson, a retired pastor. I want to share a biblical perspective on how Jesus instructs his followers to deal with conflict, especially since several council members and staff are Christians. Jesus made it clear what it means to follow him. In his description of a final judgment, anytime we provide water, food, clothing, shelter, or healing to anyone in need, we are providing it directly to him. Regarding conflict, Jesus has some very difficult instructions. You have heard it said, love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I tell you, love your enemies, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. Jesus says that when someone has done something against us, we are to take the initiative and go to them, even though they have wronged us. He even commands us to do this before we worship. If you are offering your gift in worship and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift, go first and be reconciled with your brother, then come back and finish your worship. You know that there are also Christians in the leadership of the Gathering Inn, and that the Gathering Inn was founded by a group of Christians. Therefore, if you believe that your Christian values should be reflected in your actions as council members, I would urge you to ignore the gag order and accept the invitation that Keith Estes shared with you to write your own proposed memorandum of understanding and then initiate discussions with TGI to resolve the issues. You have a right to feel blindsided and betrayed. TGI maintained that the sale had to be kept private, but then chose to inform Supervisor Landon and not you. TGI has a right to feel wronged. In your first meeting, both sides agreed that TGI needed time to get clearance from the state before releasing confidential documents. And 2 days later, the city lambasted TGI in the news. And I will also be sharing Jesus' method of conflict resolution with the TGI leadership. You have a choice: to follow Jesus or to knowingly continue to block all efforts to resolve the issues. You have a choice: to waste tens of thousands of taxpayers' dollars on legal fees or to accept TGI's invitation to sit down together and resolve the issues. I hope you will choose the latter.
Thank you for your comments. Was my microphone not working earlier when we talked about not receiving documentation we needed?
Mhm. And just a quick response to that, Pastor, I heard your comments today at the supervisors meeting too, and I told you last time, I appreciate your perspective because your church has done a lot of good work with the homeless. But I'm very familiar with the Bible and what Jesus tells us. And to my recollection, when Jesus tells us to care for the widow, the orphan, and the poor, he never said to lie, cheat, and steal to do it. And so I stand with a clear conscience of my actions and what I have said, what I have not said. And so I don't think you can
Thank
come
you.
back up. You've already said your
Okay.
comment. Just would like to say that.
Mayor, we do have to be
Yes.
careful about deliberating with the
Yeah, no, we're not gonna
non-agendized
deliberate.
item.
Not a dialogue.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're
Thank
not
you.
going to deliberate. But thank you for your comment. No, you cannot. Oh, we have, and I told you that last time. We've had multiple times.
Please,
Yes.
please take your seat. Please close your mouth.
Oh, careful.
Akinard. I have another card from Scott Warren.
I live on P Street, about 2 blocks from the proposed Gathering Inn facility. And I'm a member of Shepherd of the Sierra Presbyterian Church. I'd like to give my perspective on the proposed facility, both as a citizen and as a Christian. First, it seems to me that the proposed use of the facility is very similar to how it had been used previously. Previously, it was an assisted living facility, and the respite center that's proposed is not going to operate that much differently from building that was, as the building was previously being used. In terms of lying, cheating, and stealing, I've seen an awful lot of placards lying around with disinformation and outright lies about the proposed use of that facility. And so if there's a lack of candor on the part of the proponents and opponents of this facility. That lack of candor exists on both sides. Let me discuss this issue a little bit from a Christian point of view. First of all, we know from Matthew 25, Jesus says that what you have done to the least of these, so you have done to me. Proverbs 21, if you refuse to listen to the cry of the poor, your own cry for help will not be heard. In Proverbs 14, if you oppress poor people, you insult the God who made them, and kindness shown to the poor is an act of worship. Ladies and gentlemen, to deny medical care to the poor is immoral. To discharge elderly patients from a hospital to the streets is to consign them to death. The proposed facility would provide medical care to the people most in need of it. From the standpoint of Christian ethics, and for that matter, the standpoint of any faith tradition, this facility deserves the support of all people of goodwill. We who are citizens of Lincoln have nothing to fear. We who are people of faith have the compassion to demand that this respite center be built. Thank you.
Mike?
Mike Garabedian, did you have a comment?
There we go. I believe that when the public speaks on the open opportunity like it just have, that actually they can't be responded to. I believe that is the practice and the law. However, I'm not giving you a legal opinion.
Thank you. I won't comment. Anybody else in the audience? Yes, ma'am. Please come.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sella Greenhouse, and I live on E Street at the HOA community facing the post office. I have 4 children. They go to Western Placer Unified School District in 3 different schools. I pay $28.50 a month for a 2,500 square foot, 5-bedroom home. I am coming to you because of a few different things. One that's been reminded of, and another that I came to speak about. The first thing is the hot topic that's happening about the Gathering Inn. My position is shared by my husband, who I just spoke to before I came here, and the understanding that I have is that we as a city were blindsided by the entry of this facility. So I want to bear my testimony about something that happened to me. My husband and I were dealing with a very tough time in our marriage. We've been together since 2001. I ran away from home to my car 3 streets away. And I parked in my car and I pulled out my scriptures and I read in the backseat of my car. Next to me was a gentleman who must have seen me on his camera. He walked into his property line and he shined his camera at my car multiple times, yelling many horrible things to me about me being a transient homeless person. He then called the police. The police came down. They recognized who I was, and they said, well, you're parked legally. We can't move you. I said, I understand that. I'm just looking for a little peace. This went on for 1 hour. He continued to flash his flashlight in my car and say horrible slurs to me. I held my ground because I needed the peace and I wanted to get through this chapter. The police came a second time. The police officer said to me, well, why didn't you just move? You would have been better off just moving. But I know my rights, and I know what I was doing, and I knew that I wasn't doing anything wrong. And I did record this gentleman to let the police officers see a glimpse of how he treated me. And I bear that testimony with you. The second thing I want to tell you is my 4 children walked to school on those letter streets this gentleman spoke about. There was a kid hit by a car by another kid. There are not markings. I used to work for a asphalt company. I know the cost that it entails, but it's not safe for our children to walk those streets. We don't have safe drivers, every person that's out there. And I do ask for attention to that. And then the last thing is about transportation. I do have a problem with transportation in our county. I brought it up to my school board, and I do believe that I'll take more attention to that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Comments online?
We do have a number of people online. Does anybody have a comment? No hands are raised, Mayor.
Okay, I close public comment. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be considered as one vote. Does anyone on the council wish to pull an item?
No, Mayor.
8? D as in dog? Anybody in the audience wish to pull an item?
Eight I.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Online,
Nobody online, Mayor.
okay.
Okay, I move approval of the remainder of the consent agenda before we talk about these two.
Do I have a second? I'd like you to second.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen. And Mayor Carlskent.
Yes. Okay, first item pulled was 8D, which is a resolution designated Mayor Pro Tem Holly Andriotta as City of Lincoln's voting delegate and Councilman Ben Brown as the alternate at the League of California Cities Annual Conference. Why did you wish to pull this for
No, I just have a
discussion?
question about funding. We seem to send council members to the Cal Cities, Cap to Cap, and the Foster Business Alliance. I'd like public record to know how much we're actually spending for these conferences. You know, how much does it cost to actually belong to these organizations, and how much does it cost actually in travel expenses? Can someone tell me?
I'm about to give some rough numbers here, but I would say that to send a council member to this conference, including travel and lodging, it's probably, it depends on where it's held. This year, it's in Long Beach. It's probably about somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000, like maybe all in, including conference registration, flight, meals, stuff like that. Pretty much commiserate with most of the training that we would send folks to. If you're talking about other trips to DC and those, you'll have to ask for me to go dig that up because I don't have that off the top
Can
of
you
my
give
head.
us a rundown of that?
Yeah.
Maybe at the next meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, and just as a point of reference, nobody from the city of Lincoln went to Cap this year. We chose not to go. And that doesn't say that we won't go again, but we didn't go this year, so.
What about the Foster Business Alliance?
Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Seems to be the new one.
Any further discussion? Question from the audience, comments?
Yeah. Actually, his question had nothing to do with the item itself, but yeah,
A valid question.
not for this item, but I move
still a
approval of
valid
item
question.
8D. I move approval.
Okay, anybody online?
No one online, Mayor.
No.
No.
Okay, I need a motion.
I motioned. You need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilmember Andriana,
Yes.
Mayor Carl Skint,
Yes.
and Councilmember Lordson.
No.
You did not discuss why you voted no on this item.
I voted no. You want an answer?
Yeah.
I
We
just
agree.
don't, I
Wait,
just
wait.
don't feel that they're two best
We
representatives to
agree.
go to Cal Cities.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your answer.
I'm sorry.
That's your answer.
I was.
Funny, you didn't have that problem when you went to Cal Cities.
We,
Oh, actually, I didn't go to Cal Cities, I remember.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think the second time I didn't. So anyway, that's my answer.
we-
Enough is enough.
We made a decision as a council that we would, when we voted no on an item, we would say
Maybe you did.
why we voted no on the item.
Answer.
Okay.
And I give you
Thank
my
you.
answer.
I appreciate it.
You got it.
Next item pulled, is 8I, adopt resolution 2024-197 approving annexation of Joyner East, Ranch East to the Facilities District 2018-1 and resolution 2024-198 approving annexation 13, Joyner Ranch into the city CFD 2018-2. Why did you pull this? Do you want a presentation on the full thing? Or did you have a question?
No, I don't think I have any questions. I pose this item based on the text itself, because it says the city will be providing, I guess, tax income by providing stormwater quality and drainage facilities. The city does not have this capacity for this area and misrepresents its capability. I lived on Shellbach Drive and observed several times the inability of stormwater facilities to work there. The first example happens when it gets halfway heavy. Instead of running out into the ditch from under the street, then it starts running under the street pipes. But the most notable thing is that at the west end, where it goes under Joyner Parkway, there are two 6-foot diameter pipes. And they come out on the other side, but there's no ditch on the other side. And the other side often floods. The whole area floods, and you can see the trees flooding. It looks like one of those southern wetland forests. So I think, and the canal itself fills up to the brim and starts to overflow into the football field. I'm not sure what impact this will have on the subdivision there, but since the subdivision roads are lower than the elevation, it could be affected. But what was there before, the wetlands, the vernal pool prairie, the other areas of water held and stored water for a long time after big rains, and now that's gone. So that's an additional source of water. So, yeah, that's my concern about this item. I think it's a mistake for the city to suggest that it's going to be able to handle the stormwater for that area. And I think that's going to be a problem, could very well be a problem from the people in that. And I tried to file an appeal of the latest action there, but it was refused because of I guess a $2,500 appeal, which I don't believe a fee which was necessary. So I've tried to raise this issue with the city, and so this seems like a good opportunity for me to point out the difficulty and urge that the city do something, begin to do something if it doesn't have some plan in mind to address this area. But they're immediately building there, as you know. Thank you.
Thank you. For, you did not address this item, which is to annex into the facilities maintenance district, having nothing to do with the design or the development of any of the infrastructure. It's simply to maintain over the year, maintain the existing structure.
Well, that may well,
That's what the item is, sir.
well, that may well be, but the item says it's based, the taxation is based on providing stormwater quality and drainage facilities.
No,
And
no,
that's what it says.
Says, street maintenance, traffic signals, stormwater quality, and drainage facilities. Maintenance thereof.
Pay for, not the design.
That's all it is. If you read the formation documents for the CFDs, that's what it says. So,
Well, I wanted to urge the city to do something about the problem that it does not adequately drain that area.
but time to do that, that's when we are addressing infrastructure.
Mayor, even though it's not directly relevant to the CFD formation, would you allow either our city engineer or public works director to address that? Because we're well aware of drainage
He's
issues there.
chomping at the bit to do
Yeah.
it, so, yeah.
Yes, yeah, the item really pertains to maintenance CFD and the public safety CFD. It's one of the conditions of approval that we place on development to ensure that, you know, there is a funding stream to help the city with our maintenance obligations. Now, with the concern raised regarding our drainage facilities, yes, the city is aware that there needs to be numerous storm drain projects that we have to plan for throughout the city. And this is a mechanism that allows us to provide the necessary maintenance of existing facilities. And, you know, it's possible that with additional revenue in these CFDs, you know, think of that as potential seed money for us to embark on some of these larger projects that may end up being in the ravines where we'll have to, you know, coordinate with some of the other entities to take on these, you know, you can call them channel reclamation projects. That's really what needs to happen. The challenge with a lot of those storm drain projects is that they're in environmentally sensitive areas. So we can't just go in there with bulldozers and start digging things up, right? So we have to go through a whole process to make sure that, you know, everything is environmentally protected. And those projects do take a long time. And we are aware there are, you know, certain storm drain deficiencies, but then with every project and every design, we require the development to detain a lot of their runoff on site, to clean up their runoff before it's actually discharged into these sensitive areas. So yes, the city is working on long-term plans to address some of these issues.
Well, good luck. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for your explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Jardy.
Okay. I have a motion. Well, any other public comment?
Chapman.
Mr. Chapman.
Aaron?
Byron Chapman, council members, city staff, those here in attendance and those watching at home. I too have the same sort of concerns and scenarios about this as well. Over the years, this particular issue, and as I went through this document at home, had that not been in the description of, I realize as far as the city maintenance and what's going to be proposed. However, the last speaker pointed out not just a possibility, this is already real. I literally have been over there on many occasions when we've had stormy, rainy days on end, and without question, to be facetious, you may as well take a boat because there are places there where it is literally floating. So with the addition of all of those homes that are there, and those homes are higher than where that water is going to drain down to, and it specifically says here, such as landscape parts, open space, street lighting, street maintenance, traffic, and storm water quality and drainage facilities. So I'm reading this, and I hope that we're not in a position where we're like, we know this is happening, but we're going to take care of it. My concern is, before any houses even went out there, it was still an issue and it hadn't been taken care of. So I think maybe that's part of what the previous speaker was saying, but I too am concerned about, we're going to take care of it. The issue I have with it is there's been many, many meetings about this, and every time it has still been a drainage issue. And if you haven't changed it by now or chased it down, what are you going to do after the fact? Thank you.
No hands online, Mayor.
Okay, motion.
I move to approve item 8I, Resolution 2024-197 and 198.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank
welcome.
you. Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Carlskint?
Yes. Next item on the agenda are public hearings. We have none. Under general business, 10A, adopt resolution 2024-203, approving the memorandum of understanding between the classified employees group and the city of Lincoln and related salary schedule. Ms. Rodriguez?
This item is a request for approval for the successor MOU between the city and the classified employee group, as well as the related salary schedules. The classified group is comprised of 52 staff who are responsible for maintaining and repairing city facilities, parks, including cleaning park restrooms. They operate and maintain the city's wells, storage tanks, and water and wastewater systems, as well as meters. Additionally, staff in this group maintain the city streets, collect and transport and dispose of residential and commercial refuse. The city and the classified group held meetings over the last 6 months to negotiate the terms of this agreement. And this agreement will replace the previous 3-year memorandum of understanding, which expired on June 30th of 2024. The cost of this agreement over the 4-year period is $1,843,906. The fiscal impact for this fiscal year, 24-25, is $169,396. It will require a budget augmentation to various funds, and those augmentations are specifically described in the staff report. The significant elements of the agreement are as follows. There were several changes to classifications that are represented by this group, some removed, some added. There are cost of living adjustments that were added for cost of living adjustments beginning effective with July 1, 2024, and each year thereafter, ending on July 1, 2027, as follows: 4% effective July 1, 2024, 3% July 1, 2025, 3% July 1, 2026, and 5% July 1, 2027. In addition to these increases, we also took a look at the market and these classifications, and it made increases to those classifications where we were struggling with recruitment and retention. Specifically, these classifications were the maintenance worker 1 and 2, the refuse truck driver 2, senior refuse truck driver, and wastewater collection systems technician 2. All of these classifications had recruitment and retention issues that needed to be addressed and therefore we felt that it was necessary to add in these market salary adjustments for those. In addition to the salary increases, the city has agreed to contribute up to $100 per month in matching funds for employees covered by this agreement who participate in a city-sponsored deferred comp program or a health savings account. There is also the removal of the limitation of staff members who are eligible for human waste pay. That pay compensates individuals who are responsible for cleaning our human feces in our park restrooms. We had limited it to 2 staff, but we found that that didn't actually, it wasn't feasible for the employees who perform those duties. The next area of the agreement was a standby duty revision, which basically changed the methodology and the rate of pay for standby duty. It was identified some time ago that employees in these classifications that are paid for standby were eligible to receive it during their actual regular business hours due to some language that was not clearly written in the previous agreement. So we've revised that to make it an hourly rate and only compensate those individuals for actual number of hours worked. The next 2 provisions affect vacation and sick leave and were added to prorate sick leave accruals for employees who take an unpaid leave of more than 1 pay period. Next, we have a removal or elimination of sick leave cash out for new employees who are hired after the adoption of this MOU. This elimination of sick leave cash out will be a savings to the city in the future. One of the major savings that will also be realized by the city with this agreement is the elimination of the retiree health care for future employees. That was a big win with this agreement for the city just because of the cost of health care. So there's several provisions that needed to be added in order to accomplish this, including how we go about contributing the healthcare contributions, how we actually deposit the healthcare contributions for active employees. That whole model had to be revised in order for us to accomplish this change to retiree health benefit as a result of the requirements set by CalPERS and how we are required to match our retiree health care with our current employees. So those changes were also added into this agreement. And that concludes the changes that were included in the agreement, and as well as my presentation, and I can answer any questions you may have.
No question, but just thank you again for, I know this has been a long haul one, and so appreciate all your hard work on this and appreciate the fact that we are doing our best to be more competitive so we can recruit and retain. And so thank you so much, Veronica. I really appreciate it.
I can't thank you enough. It was hard, but it, I think, is a win-win. In the long run, it's a win for the city.
Definitely.
Definitely in the long run, it costs us money now. But it's a good strategy, good way to go. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the audience?
Mayor, if I could just add one thing. So labor negotiations are really difficult, and especially when you have, limited resources and in an employment environment, as Veronica kind of mentioned, that's super competitive right now. And we're in the service business, right? So you have to have people to do that for the most part, and good people preferably. So some of this was about trying to retain and create more attractive sort of employment opportunities for really great folks to come work here. But a lot of it is just to sort of recognize that Matt's crew does everything from, cleaning up minor messes to paving, patch paving, to pothole paving, to making sure your water is clean and safe to drink, to making sure that your sewer flushes when it's supposed to picking up your garbage every week. Parks getting mowed, on and on and on and on. A lot of the work that just kind of goes generally unnoticed a lot of the time. And so I think it's always important to kind of recognize that. The second half, just because Veronica mentioned it, but I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of how important it is. One of the big asks from the council during this negotiation was to figure out a way to begin to phase away retiree healthcare. And that's a model change in Lincoln that's new. And new-ish in Placer County. For a long time, it was sort of the standard around here that you offered that benefit. And many communities have kind of gotten away from it because it's simply just not affordable for us to do in the long term. And so to put a finer point on it, what this will do is as new folks are hired here, they will not be receiving that kind of benefit upon retirement one day. And so in some sense, that's sort of sad, but it also will give the city resources in the future to do other things to make employment here attractive to people that want to come work here. So just want to add that little part.
Any
Also-
questions, comments?
Really quick, Mayor, also, obviously, Councilmember Ben Brown's not here, and he had asked me earlier to tell you thank you as well, and he appreciates your efforts.
Okay, any comments online?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, I asked for.
I was impressed that there was 53 people within this group that do all of that maintenance he spoke about. And I do recognize it, and I do use the services of the city greatly, and I'm very appreciative of that. It did perk my ears because I specialize in Medicare for a career. So I just want to make sure that as we phase away from supporting that part of our employees of the city, that we prepare them that if they retire at 55, they have 10 years until they're eligible for federal government health insurance. And so as we want to, that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good point that we've talked about it a lot, so she could address that.
The PEPRA individuals that are now in the PEPRA group, they're now working until 62 or later. The other area that we address this in is with regard to the deferred comp match, where it's an either deferred comp match of $100 or it's a health savings account match. So these newer employees that are coming in have the opportunity to begin saving now so that they're prepared for the future when they do hit the age of needing retiree healthcare.
Thank you. Any other questions? Saying none online.
Not online.
I'll accept the motion.
Bill, do you want to make the motion?
I motion that we adopt resolution 2024-203.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Motion.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
and Mayor Carl Skint.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica.
thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is item 10B, Resolution 2024-204. Approving agreement between the City of Lincoln and the County of Placer for the transfer of property tax for the annexation of Village 5A and a portion of the Village 5A, 5 specific plan. We've done this before.
We've done, yes, thank you. We have done this before. In fact, we've done this exactly before. So just real quickly, bring everybody up to speed if you're new to this project. Village 5 has been a project that has been on the books and studied and litigated and adopted and readopted for well over 10 years, probably closer to 15 years. last year, the city finally made it to a pretty important point, which was a LAFCO consideration of the annexation. The LAFCO board approved that annexation. It went to a vote, a protest vote of some of, or for, of all affected property owners and registered voters in the annexation area. That protest vote failed. And so thereafter, we had some discussions with LAFCO and the applicant, majority property owners. And one of the pieces of advice and ideas that was raised was to do our best to accommodate the residents that live in that annexed area who are not interested, at least at this time, in coming into city limits, and redraw the map essentially for a phased annexation. So we've already discussed that at council. Council's already approved that. That application is now sitting in LAFCO's office. One of the requirements of that is that the city and county need to have a tax sharing agreement on file for the hearing to proceed. It's a procedural matter. In speaking with the county, they felt pretty strongly that the map needed to be adjusted on the application, or excuse me, on the tax sharing agreement to represent what now will be phase one of the annexation, even though the reality is, at least in my opinion, that over time, I suspect that the majority of the rest of Village 5 will annex in future phases. That said, it's a textual kind of technical change to make sure the document lines up correctly. And what you'll see in the resolution is some language proposed by the county that gives myself and the CEO the ability to change the mapping within the agreement so it's reflective of this new phase, and also gives us the ability to sit down and rethink the ratios of property tax split as it relates to commercial versus residential. So just super quickly, so I won't bore everybody to tears. The way that it was set up originally was the county is generally concerned when you annex property for any residential purpose that that adds cost to the county services. We could debate whether or not, to what level we agree with that, but that is the thesis. So the way we built it was that their worry is that sometimes cities will annex a bunch of land that's commercial, and then we've seen this many times even in Lincoln. A few years later, a developer comes to you and says, hey, I can't build commercial here because it just won't pencil. I got to build residential instead. County's concerned about that. So are we. So the way that we wrote this was to disincentivize future city councils from making that land use change. And so essentially the way it works is you get a base amount, 38% of property tax will go to the city and the remainder to the county of our split. As each phase of commercial builds, so there's 4.3 million, give or take, square feet of commercial that's planned for that area. There's 4 ratio levels. So after 1.2 million square feet are built, that share raises to 40% take for the city and 60% county. It then raises again at 2.2 million and again at 3.3 million and ends up at a 45 to 55 share between city and county over time. It may be that before this is all said and done, because now this project's a little bit smaller, those ratios change to the city's advantage so it remains equitable. And we included some language in there that allows us to modify that a little bit so it's fair for both parties, or at least perceived to be fair. And the other component to this agreement that's super important just to point out is that it contains the exact same provision that exists in some of our others, which allows a reopener clause at any significant change of condition. I would have told you a year ago that I thought that language was sort of throwaway language, but we actually have practice now of reopening some agreements and renegotiating those with the county so that we can get additional resources here in the city to fund police and fire and other essential general fund needs. So it's a technical reason that we're asking for approval. It will allow the project to move forward to the next step at LAFCO, which is similar to what happened last year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't know. Public questions?
No questions from the audience? Anybody online?
So we do have a few folks. Mr. Garabedian, please come forward.
Thank you. Mike Garabedian, Placer County. Tomorrow, well, my first engagement with LAFCO was in 1984 when Dixon did its first annexation out to I-80, because I live south of Dixon. At that time, CEQA didn't apply to it, but the Boson case did apply CEQA to it. And I have followed LAFCOs ever since, especially the Commission on Local Governance in the 21st century, was it? Did a 2000 report and revised the LAFCO law, the Knox-Nesbitt Act. So at the Board of Supervisors this morning, I opposed this agreement. I feel that it's unfair to the city of Lincoln. You're not in the same, don't have the same bargaining strength. And I guess this allows some flexibility to deal with this. And as I've talked, as you well know before, when the whole area was before, up for vote, it failed. And so then, and normally you wait for a year before trying again, but in this case, you went ahead and developed a new proposal and well, I thought it should have gone to the Planning Commission to have public input, but it hasn't. So I'm really quite concerned about this and the rapidity of going ahead with this, along with all the other developments and the question of services to that area and what's going to happen. I don't blame the people who wanted to be independent from the city for their desire to do that. But I think that there needs to be a new assessment of this for the city that might help you with it being in a better bargaining position with the county, who seems to hold all the chips. So I guess that's my main point, that at least there'll be some chance to follow this in the future. But this morning, it turned out the key county person who evaluates this hadn't been given the proposal yet to review. So it seems in a very uncertain state. And I think that's the kind of information you need before moving ahead. And all I can say is, good luck. It's a bad situation.
Thank you for your concern.
That-
Any other comments? Online comment?
No one online, Mayor.
None? Okay. Come up for a vote?
Okay, I move approval of item 10B, resolution 2024-204.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Thank you. Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen, and Mayor Carlskin.
Yes, for the fourth or fifth time.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda, thank you. Next item on the agenda, city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick things. Wanted to send a huge thank you to the Friends of Auburn Ravine and the over 160 volunteers that showed up on Saturday, the 21st, to do their yearly major cleanup of the Auburn Ravine. This is a special effort that's above and beyond what our creek cleanup team does every week. And so they generated, or collected rather, about 2,000 pounds of trash that day that was taken to the dump. And so it just gives you an idea about the scale of the issue when you have this day when a bunch of volunteers come out to help clean up the creek after we're already cleaning it up weekly. So that's the scale of the problem that we're consistently dealing with. So, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it would be interesting to go back and look at last year and the year before, because 2,000 sounds like a lot, but I think it used to be a lot more.
No, it did. And in fact, we've had weeks where just the small team that goes out of 15 folks gets about a ton to 2 tons sometimes. It's a couple trailer loads that Matt's team takes to the dump on a pretty regular basis. And, you know, just to give folks an idea about what they're dealing with down there, it's everything from just normal trash you'd see on anywhere to transmissions of cars and tires and, you know, refrigerator. I mean, you name it, they've probably found it down there at this point. So that creek doesn't, is not a place that people can actually appreciate just because it exists. It's there, you know, and nice because these folks are dedicated to it. So they just really deserve all. The Friends of the Auburn Ravine are just a fabulous organization, and we're super lucky to have them. Separately, just wanted to throw a big thank you out to Chris Wyatt and Harriet Garland, who are my partners on setting up the Senior Health and Safety Fair. That went off last Wednesday. It was a super success. I believe we had quite a few more people than we had the year before. Learned a lot of lessons. We had a member from police department giving some updates on kind of senior and elder scams that are going on. I think we had somebody from the district attorney's office from the Department of Elder, what is it called, Chief? Department of Elder Crimes Unit? Is that what it is? Yeah. Came out, gave some updates about what they're seeing. We had a number of different hospitals and other healthcare providers present, services for folks, just all kinds of resources. And so it seemed to go pretty well. We're learning a little bit more every year about what people want and they don't want. So hopefully as the event continues to mature, you know, it becomes even bigger. And I don't have any other major updates except for our city engineer, Vin Kay, held a pretty well attended. I was actually surprised, a pretty well attended workshop on Lincoln Boulevard and some grant money that we're going after for some road work over there. And so we'll be moving forward with that. And I think sorry, I lost my train of thought. I think I had one more that I wanted to mention. I think that's it for now. I'll probably have something else, but I'll just report it next meeting.
Okay. Council initiated business.
I apologize. I did have one more. Thank you, Richard. We had a badge. We had a badge pinning ceremony for 2 new firefighters that we hired on yesterday. And as Chief mentioned during his comments, we try to make kind of a big deal of each and every badge pinning that we do here in Lincoln to just show the firefighter or police officer, whoever it may be, appreciation for their signing up for this kind of service. But as he mentions in every one of his things, that this is as much about the family of those fire and police officers, because as he says, they're the ones that are going to be waiting up late at night, wondering when these folks are coming home from a late overnight night shift, whether they're concerned about, you know, some being injured on a call. They're the ones out there really dealing with the difficult stuff. And so we're super excited. These 2 young men just came on board. They actually come to us with quite a bit of firefighting experience themselves, so they're not newbies. We will continue to celebrate new hires as we go along. But it's nice to be able to be in somewhat of a position to have, you know, a fairly regular process of hiring staff to supplement and replace folks that are retiring. So last part.
Did you have anything for council initiated business? I don't have anything. Okay, committee reports.
So I have one. I'm filling in for Paul for PCTPA tomorrow. But for the Waste Management Authority, our meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, our staff, our new executive director has been working very closely with FCC, the operator, because they're behind in the new project, and they came forward and they wanted like $8 million more from the authority to do all these things. And they said all these, you know, reasons why. And our staff really negotiated hard with them and said, we're not going to pay that. And so we've got them back down to where we're not paying anything else. And they're still going to be a little bit behind with the final build, but they're back on track. And so it's been a little frustrating, but I'm really impressed with our new director, Scott Scholz. He's doing a great job, and he's got them in line and cracking the whip, and we're not having to pay anything else, which we weren't going to anyway, but now they've agreed to that. So it's been good.
I noticed on the agenda that they were giving disincentives, which is not
Yeah.
what you want to do when
No.
you're in business. So he's doing a good job of managing them. Well, the one I'll report on is Pioneer. Pioneer Energy had a meeting, and the major part of the meeting by far was a discussion of expansion. The corporate philosophy is expand to be better and not bigger. So there's a rigorous amount of analysis that goes into planning or looking or deciding whether you're going to expand or not. They are in the process of planning for, and we saw the financials, very good financials, of a major expansion, which in fact will double their revenue. They're talking to people that want to come in, that we're talking to, that the earliest it can happen because of the financial aspects of the power industry and what the price of power is now is 2027. So it's what, 3 years out, two and a half years. Anyway, the city of Chico, the city of Oroville, town of Paradise, and the county of Butte. The county of Nevada, the cities in Nevada are already members of JPA. And in Sutter County, city of Live Oak and Yuba City, and Tuolumne, the city of Sonoma. So, and according to the expansion committee, these are cherry picked. This is a subset of the people that have come to Pioneer that want to join the JPA. So makes you feel good that it's achieving its goals, that like-minded, which is a major part of it. They've got to have the same set of values that the Pioneer has, which is Placer County. That people are not, beaten down the door, and we're able to cherry pick. So that was kind of exciting. Doubling the revenue allows us to do a lot of things from a financial standpoint, get lower prices on power, invest in power generation. So anyway, it was a good meeting, an exciting meeting. And my second to the last one. Next on the agenda is information items.
Mayor, I would like to make one comment, one piece of information in response or in light of some of the comments tonight about the gathering and issue. I would just like to say again, for those who have not heard this or not aware, if you have not actually read, now again, we do not have all the supporting documents that go with the grant application that TGI received from the state. But if you haven't read the grant application, I highly recommend that you get a copy of it, and we're happy to give it to you and read that, because what the grant application says is completely opposite of what they're presenting to the public and what was presented here tonight. It's night and day. And so that's very alarming. And the other piece of that is this facility is not even open yet. And we already have homeless from very good sources that we know homeless people from San Francisco are being given bus and rail tickets to here. And because the word is out. And we also had a couple homeless individuals come on the campus of Glen Edwards Middle School asking where the facility was because they need medical respite. And they clearly were not old and infirmed. And so it's already happening, what we feared would be happening, and it hasn't even opened yet. So if you are not informed about what the application actually says, maybe you should read it because it's very enlightening. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Certainly.
I just help feeling, I can't help feeling that none of this would be necessary if we had supported the Campus of Hope. That was in an industrial area, not in our city. Okay, and, you know, it was just dismissed willy-nilly by the council and the supervisors. If that had happened, we wouldn't be having this problem right now. Now, it's 200 beds, it was fully serviced. The TGI kept pushing it. Remember, we went to some of their events, you know, the Campus of Hope events. So, I don't know. That's my one.
I have an information item. I thought you would. We,
Sorry, I.
three of us,
Oh, yeah.
were judges
Oh, yes.
at the Rib Fest. 12 Bridges
Favorite
area
thing. Yep.
had a huge, I'd like to know how many people were actually there, but they put on a Rib Fest every year. We got to judge and eat the ribs. But I couldn't believe the number of families, they were almost all families, out there having a great time, eating ribs and being in bouncy balls and riding bulls and whatever. So it was a great community, as usual, a Lincoln community.
Yep, it's always a great event out there and it was a lot of fun. I tell people that's judging rib cook-off contest is my favorite thing about being an elected official because it's easy and it's good.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you, everybody. Meeting's adjourned.